The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to start this webinar pretty soon since it's already slightly past 11:13. We just have a few people joining in, so I'm just going to wait for a second to see if numbers go up for a little bit. Just like with any other webinar, guys, feel free to type a question on the GoToWebinar panel of questions. If I don't have a chance to answer the question right away, since we only have about 30 minutes and the subject can be fairly deep, we'll come back to you on those, and we will certainly sort all of them, if there are not too many, in next week's webinar at the same time. Next time we'll have a Q&A at the same time, and then the following webinar in 2 weeks' time, that one will be part 2 of today's webinar. Just to double check things, can you guys let me know on probably on the question tab if you can hear me okay? All right, thanks for confirming. I have a couple of people already confirming that it's all right. Cool. So without any further delays, we're going to get started with this. So today's webinar is going to be the start series of an IFC collaboration group of webinars that we're going to put together just by simply mimicking what will happen on a common project. Now, by common, we can mean, 100 million things. So I'm going to try to tackle as many situations as I can. And also I'm going to try to push for, in some senses, worst case scenarios, just to make sure that certain things will go more realistically rather than in the ideal world. So let's start with this. It's a little bit of my name. I'm Nando Mogollon. I'm a digital design consultant with Central Innovation. I'm a trained architect and trained in BIM management as well. I have about 19 years of international industry experience in a few countries. And in the past 5 years, I've joined Central Innovation, helping with the both implementation and consulting of Archicad and Solibri, and certain other topics regarding IFC and OpenBIM. Today's objectives will be, since we only have about 25 minutes now, so we're just gonna take you through a few steps on the typical things that we'll take to prepare an Archicad project or an Archicad file for IFC data exchange. We won't be able to do it all in today's session. That's why we have a series of sessions for this. But we're going to certainly start with it. We're going to manipulate the project location for collaboration, which is one of the very typical things and one of the early things we want to sort out. And along with that, we're going to start setting project-specific IFC translators for the purpose of getting the collaboration going in the right way. So, of course, we're going to start making a few assumptions. Those assumptions in this particular case will be on the side of us having a project that somehow resembles a schematic design project where we didn't really get our hands into a proper survey, so we're making a lot of assumptions about location, likely to get the geo-reference location wrong to begin with, but that's why we're going to fix it. And the other major assumption we're making here, other than not really knowing where the project is located when it comes to real coordinates, the other big assumption we're making is that we are in a position to tell everyone else involved, all of our consultants using Revit or Tekla or whatever else, we get them to follow what we're going to say will be the project location or a shared project location. The project location we're talking about in this case will be for the purpose of producing a project information model, so not for final delivery where things tend to be geolocated in real coordinates. So right now we're going to basically talk about shared coordinates for the sake of coordination among different disciplines. And we're going to go ahead and do some of the pieces some of the steps that will take you through that. Please remember to subscribe to future webinars. You can scan that QR code on the screen or just simply go to that short bit of the website, the CI Archicad events. Let's go right away and jump into Archicad to start with the subject that we're in. Okay, so what you have right there is just a fairly simple model in terms of what's in there. We don't have too many items. That's not the purpose of these things. It's not about model complexity, but I wanted to have something that had enough bulk to describe a medium-sized building. What we have there is something about 20 stories with a couple of basements located on a, in New South Wales in Bathurst. So it's further away from the coast. And I've done that intentionally, talking about trying to aim for worst case scenarios. So we are located this project in a place where we're not that close to sea level. So RLs will be a little bit more than you will expect. So that's what we have for a model. And what had happened in this project, describing the assumption, all the assumptions that we're making, is that when the project was started, basically, there was no other assumption over Project North or location, simply that taking on board the common best practices of locating our project there, sort of on the upper and right hand side of our Archicad origin, which is this little node in here. So that was done, typical thing to do. And the only other thing that we did just sort of to locate this thing at the lack of a proper survey, which is also a common thing to do, was that we just went ahead and took a picture from Google Maps or similar. Again, worst case scenario, probably will have better tools than this, but worst case scenario, if I don't have anything else, I'll try to get my hands onto a picture like this just to give it a little bit of context. So if I go again back to my floor plan, if I want to sort of have an idea of where this thing is located, I will probably just overlay that bitmap that I took in there at the right scale and sort of place it in here. So as you can see, there's no a lot of magic into this. It's kind of half of this is guessing, half of it is sort of intentionally put in a certain place. So taken from this, what should you do to get things started and geolocate this project for the sake of collaboration? Okay, so first thing you want to do is get your hands on a survey so that you know what's going to be the real or true north according to the coordinate systems that you're using. And the second thing that you want to do is make sure that you can locate this project somewhere in northing and eastings or X and Y according to the coordinate system that you're using. I'm going to use MGA since I've got my hands on in an Australian survey, but a similar thing will happen in New Zealand just using a local coordinate system. So just to save time, again, because I don't have much, I've already created a worksheet for the survey, which I'm going to use so that I can mimic what's happening on the survey side. Now, I brought this, and I think it's important to mention that, I brought this as a drawing, which is, as simple as simply taking a DWD survey like so, dragging and dropping into my screen. That'll turn it into a drawing like this. And then I went ahead and crop it around, but haven't done anything more than that in this particular file. So I have the area that I need right there on the screen. And that survey, it's already showing me that Project North is not, you know, the building north as I put it. And the survey itself also brings about not only contour lines if you need them and RLs at every individual survey point. It also comes with something that I'm very interested in, which is the control points or nail points on the site or around the site. And what actually I'm looking for are symbols like this. They tend to be triangles or triangles with a little circle. And what they describe is the specific known location of something on the real world, typically a one of those metal nails on the walkways or on the curbs, or sometimes on the street around the city. And those are kept there for control because they tend to be known places for surveyors. In this particular case, I have a few of them. I have this one here, located at this coordinate system on the MGA reference system. So that is that. That's a series of numbers. This it's given in meters, so I believe those are decimal places, and that's the RL of that one point. I have a few of them floating around. So I have that. I have these, and I think I have another one up here. There you go. So the first thing I want to do, just for the sake of knowing what's going on and being able to locate other points in the survey, is that I'm going to go ahead and only within the extents of this worksheet, I'm actually going to place these in the right location. Now, to place that in the right location, all I need to do will be to move that little center of the cross here to the X and Y, actually, yeah, X and Y locations as indicated in this particular survey. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag these from this reference point in here. And in order for me to get the location right, all I need to do will be to hit the letter X on my keyboard and type in the numbers on X and then in Y, 6 to 9, 901, and hit enter. Once you do that, that survey has been located in the middle of nowhere up in what MGA will see as real location. Now, how do I know that? Well, it's hard to tell here from the screen, so I'm going to bring in a useful panel, a useful palette called the coordinates palette. I'm just going to bring that about, and that's this palette here. I'm just going to place it back there so it doesn't get in the way. And you'll see how this palette actually indicates the real coordinate system on a typical Cartesian system. So X and Y will describe what's the location of the mouse. So now if I go get closer to this, and I get closer to that point, you will see how the numbers described down here will be the same numbers I had on that control point, meaning that I've placed this particular survey where it should be according to that coordinate system. Same thing will happen if I get closer to this one here. You will see the numbers in the coordinates palette, mimicking what you see here on the screen. So I know that that is the case. You can use another tool, which I have sort of pre-cooked here in my file. I'd say that as a favorite already. But what you can get is an object in Archicad that is called the coordinate dimension object that you can find under 2D elements, graphic symbols, coordinate dimensions. And that one, when placed on the screen, will measure the location of that point from 0. So in that case, this was actually measuring from the 0, the real 0. So I can actually get real coordinates in this survey just by clicking on the screen using that object. All right. So now that I've got that, what I would like, let me get rid of this since I don't need that right now. Now that I've had that, how do I match this location with the one that I have already? Okay, so second step in this case will be go ahead and probably, after you have done it a couple of times, you may not need to do the following step if you have the experience a few times. But since I'm trying to demonstrate how to do it for the first time, I'm just going to go ahead and create another worksheet. And I'm going to call that worksheet project coordinates. That I have it here. And I have it empty so far. Because what I want to do here is to mimic what will happen when you relocate the project and mimic a different location for the sake of exporting an IFC. So the first thing that I want to do will be just going to go and copy this drawing from the survey, go back to my project coordinates, and I'll paste it there in the middle of the screen, like so. And now this one is not geolocated like the other survey that I have on the survey worksheet. This one is just sitting in the middle of nowhere, because what I would like to do now is to overlay my plan, which I have there, to see where is this geo-reference control point should be located now that I need to export these to a known location for the sake of sharing an IFC. So first thing will be for me to go and trace over that floor plan, like so. So now I can see the floor plan sitting there, and then my say movable survey sitting here. So I'm just going to go ahead and simply move my drawing so that I can somewhat locate that correctly. So let's go ahead and move this, say this point around here. It'll take you probably a few tries before you get it right, but it's okay. Moving X and Y, it's not a problem. What is trickier, it's always the rotation, which is highly recommended that you guys will always type in manually rather than trying to match lines, because there will be hidden decimal places that you may not be accounting for. So it's always good to go for round numbers when you're rotating. So let's say if that gets me closer to the building, that'll be fine. Then I'm just going to rotate this. So let's go ahead, and it doesn't matter which point you use for now. So I'm going to go ahead and use there and try to rotate this. I'm going to go for 19 degrees. Sorry, the other way around. Minus 19 degrees. That might be getting me closer to the thing. It seems like there's a little bit of an offset or misplaced there. So just going to go ahead and try to match this probably to this corner there. This will be, depending on project and depending on what the real location is, probably one of these corners should match the other one. That I don't know. This is an existing building there that I'm trying to match to the new one. So it could be the case that my argument will be that that corner matches this corner and so on. So depending on project need, you'll find the right location. The only thing that you actually need to be fairly careful with will be the actual rotation. If we're going to assume it's going to be 19 degrees the way I just did, it could be like that. But it could be a trickier number like 19 degrees and a few decimal places. But I will say try not to go for more than 2 decimal places, since then you can start struggling with accuracy. So just to round it up, I can see that that's what I was assuming to be the curved line. So probably I still need to move these up there like so, and maybe a little bit to the left like so. And I'm just going to leave it there. This is not a matter of precision for this one exercise, other than just make sure that you understand the process of moving around a survey with your building on the background so that you can locate things correctly. there should be some magic to this, but that really depends on project needs. I'm going to make the assumption that in this particular case, this line that I have right there, which is my assumed site front line, is correct. So if that is fine, then I've done my job with the project coordinates. And what I've done so far, it's nothing but matching a survey and accommodating the survey to my building. And the reason why I've done that, it's only for this. What I'm actually looking for, let me get rid of the trace. All I was looking for was to make sure that I knew where this control point, which is a known point in the world, will be sitting now that I have a better location to that from the building. So this point here will be my new 0. So when I exchange the IFC file, I want to make sure that instead of using, let's go back to the ground floor, instead of using the Archicad origin, which is this, I want to use that point up there. And now that I have a real location that will give me, I can locate, I can reference this to a control point on real life, then I can go ahead and go back to my ground floor plan, trace the project location coordinates, which I have in here, and then use this point to be my new project 0. How do you do that? Easily. All you need to do is to use an object on your library, but it's called the survey point. So go ahead and look for survey point. You'll get it right there. I have already saved a favorite for that. So it's going to go ahead and use that. Let me double check here. Yeah, that's the one that I'm using. And I'm just going to place that on a separate layer that I have for it. And I'm simply just going to place that right there, center to center. Okay, so now that I've done this, this location can be used to save this file as an IFC, but I still need to do another step to indicate that that's what I want. So from this point, Archicad can do two things. Can either export your file using the original project 0, or it will be able to use this point in here. There's still two things that I want to do to get this thing sorted. The first one will be to get the real project north, which is not that. It's actually, let's go ahead and check that. It's actually pointing that way. So for that, I can go ahead and change my project north in the project location, where now, rather than being 90 degrees, it should be 90 degrees minus 19. So you can either type that there, or you can indicate that by using this line and trying to match that. Now, if you try to match that, you'll see that you start getting decimal places there that might give you errors. So that's what I was saying. Try to go with numbers rather than going and matching lines, because different lines might not be accurate in that drawing. So trust your own numbers rather than trusting a drafting line produced by others. So going this way, 19 degrees will take me back to 80, and then closer to 71. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in 71 degrees. And you'll see how the survey points, by default, they tend to follow the project north. So now what's going to happen is that when I export this file as an IFC, I'm going to get something that will resemble my exercise that I just did in here, where this will be the origin. and then the building will be sitting there at an angle. Sort of, kind of, let's show you that with this. 90 degrees. So it'll be something like this, where this is going to be the origin, and then my building will be sitting down there, right? So with that, I'll be sorting project north, done. And then I need to sort out the RL. Common practice here in Australia is that we tend to go and fix the story settings, basically by saying, all right, my ground floor, now that I have that, or my basement or site, one of those levels, you tend to go and say, I'm going to locate that in real height. So people will start typing in 702 and so on. That's not completely necessary. And let's say for worst case scenario, we sort of screw it from the beginning. So we're assuming that we have to reset that to 0. And I won't change that right now. Not enough time to do that. So rather than doing that, instead, what I'll do is this object, I'm just going to sync it enough to match that number. And in doing so, you will effectively be elevating the entire project by around that number. Easy to do. All you need to do is go ahead and type it in here. So I'll say, well, you're going to be minus 702,635 millimeters. So that's 700 meters and a bit down. And by doing that, what's going to happen is that my building will be elevated by the RL distance when it goes to IFC. The Archicad file doesn't move, it stays where it is, and that's where it's going to go. All right, so last few steps. What it's missing at this point will be to go into a 3D window, deciding what is it that I need to save for the sake of sharing this very first and initial IFC. And as it is best practice, create a translator that uses that one particular survey point for the sake of export. So let's go ahead and do that. What you will do is go here to your OpenBeam menu in IFC translators. I will have a bunch of out-of-the-box translators in here, which are fine to have as a starting point, but since this will be project specific, I want to make sure that the one that I have will be doing the right thing for this project. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with this one that says general parametric export. You can start with probably the IFC 4. This one is based on IFC 2x3, which is very common still. So I'm going to use that because I know that it's based on a model view definition called coordination view, which is fairly close to what I'm looking for. And I'm going to start by creating a new one, which is going to be a duplication of that. But then I'm going to call it IFC webinar, since that's the name of my project. And then I'll call it project location. Going to go ahead and click on OK. So now I'll be using that for the sake of this last bit of the exercise. Then the next thing you want to make sure it's happening is that this geometry conversion option that you have here, that's that preset, you want to make sure that you're going to be using one that uses not the project origin in Archicad, like it says here, but rather the survey point. Now, I don't want to change that one there because that preset might be already being used by other translators. I'm going to create mine, and I'm going to call it, probably leave the same name, geometry conversion for general export, and then I'm going to add survey point at the end, so that to indicate that this one will be using the survey point, and go and change it. Now that I've done that, I have a new preset in here. I can click on OK. And for this one translator, I still need to go down here in this list and indicate that that's the one that needs to be go with this. So if that's done, all I need to do is to click on OK. And as a quick exercise as we're doing in here, we can just simply go ahead and say save as, like so. I'm going to choose a translator here, which in my case will be IFC webinar project location, the one I just did, and saved on my folder an IFC called IFC Collaboration Sample Project. And then I'm going to say your 01 location. If that's all right, all I need to do is go and hit save. It's saving all visible elements, so everything that it's in there. Probably some things will be filtered out depending on translation. Go ahead and save. And let's give it a minute or two. Well, while it finishes, I haven't seen too many questions. If you have any questions at all of things that I've been doing probably far too quick, feel free to type it. I'm going to keep them there, and I will come back to you on next week's webinar, which is going to be purely a Q&A session. Okay, we're going to give it another few seconds. Should be finishing soon. Okay. I've got the trees there that do not export as they should, but it's all right. Cool. So now I've got an IFC sitting here that I want to go and take a look at. So what I'll do is I've already have launched Solibri Anywhere, which is the free version of Solibri. And then I'm going to take a look at that IFC and see what happened with it. So I can go ahead and click on Open a Model. I'm going to go to my desktop, navigate to the folder that I've got, open the file. Yep, there would be an architectural file. That's all right. And then what I've got here is a project file that I have exported, and I'm worried about the actual location of this file. So if you want to go ahead and double check that, we can go check that from the top. You'll see that effectively this building is being twisted. So we are in a real location for the sake of the export. So this thing is looking at the building correctly. And if you want to check location in here, all you need to do is use a markup tool that brings you location on top of the screen. So that will be this coordinate stamp. And then I can look at locations simply by clicking this button here. And then you'll see that location of elements will be displayed already here. And voila, we've got a building that is being already geolocated according to a reference point that I've indicated. Elevation, as you can see there, it's already been fixed. And the X and Y, northing and eastings, are already being measured from the point that it's located. Let me take a look. That will be up here in the middle of somewhere. So that is a way for me to change a location from Archicad anywhere. couple of extra things that I need to do. I need to mention at the end. When you export the IFC by using the survey point doesn't even have to be visible. You can have it on a hidden layer and it's still going to work. Number one. Number two, if you, for whatever reason, ended up placing more than one survey point, only the first survey point will be taken into consideration. Okay, so what I keep doing in the next sessions is continue with the same building with the same exercise, because there are still a few items there that I want to fix. There are a few geometry issues there, but that was not the purpose of this one. It's a fairly early model with a very early intention of getting or fixing location. So we're going to continue with that exercise in next sessions. A few relevant articles that you will like to go and check, because they have far more detail that I can give you in these few minutes. There's a basics of IFC-based model exchange export. If you click or hit that link or follow that link. And a further explanation on how the survey point is supported on the IFC side for export and import, including a few comments on how it behaves when that gets read on the side of companies using Revit. For any additional help, remember you have support here in Australia and in New Zealand following the emails you have there on the screen. For general inquiries, you can always contact customer success at Central Innovation, or technical support with a hotline and a ticketing system that you guys are familiar with, the MyCI, both in Australia and New Zealand. Thank you very much for your time. Please make sure you check the rest of the content in this webinar, which will be hosted at MyCI for further reference. Remember, you're logging into MyCI through the website and download and install any CI tools if you need them. Stay tuned. Next week, we'll come back with a Q&A on this and some clarifications, some bits and pieces that we did in today's exercise. All right. Thank you very much, guys. We'll come back to you with the answers for the question. I've already seen that there are a few questions in there, and we'll see you next week and probably reply to those questions privately once I can. Thank you very much, and see you next time.